As soon as it pops up, I'll shut it down again and you and I can just get chatting. Redirecting to YouTube. Here we are. As soon as it pops up, I'll shut it down again and you and I can just get chatting. So there we go. I have shut it down again so as we don't get that feedback. The meeting is now streaming live to YouTube. Welcome, Michael. I'm really delighted that you could join me here tonight after a wee bit of trouble getting in. How are you?
Aye, thanks. I was going to say, nervous, as I always am in these kind of situations, but then, um, nervousness runs in my family. See, we never had alcoholics, we had nervous people. Um, and nerves can give you cirrhosis and aneurysms and all sorts of things, so,
It certainly can.
um,
The body keeps the score, indeed. Yeah.
aye, and there was always that, I always remember kind of growing up. I wonder if they were kind of predicting my addictive tendencies because I could always overhear, like adults talking, saying, "It's an awfully nervous boy, that isn't he?" And
Right.
it was just one of those. Aye. Yeah,
It was it was a thing, wasn't it? Like when we were growing up, you're about the same age
aye,
as me. It's like, oh, she lives on her nerves. She's up
aye,
she's up to high dough.
up to high do, and aye, there's a one with that boy as well. That's the other one.
Uh, so welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. So we'll probably chat for maybe somewhere between half an hour and an hour, depending on how it goes, Michael. Um,
Okay.
and I'll probably just ask you wee bits and bobs about your recovery, but we'll try and keep it a kind of open conversation, and anything that comes up comes up. I mean, start off with just maybe how's your day been?
Um, At the moment, it's because I'm going through this long bout of chronic fatigue. It's all kind of energy management. So I've achieved a shower, a shave, and some ironing,
Pretty
and
good
then
going.
I had this. So I just made sure I didn't put too much in my day.
Showering a
Uh,
shift's always a good start, isn't it? I mean,
aye,
especially if you're suffering in any way physically or you're like, even mentally, if you're suffering, getting a shower and a shave can be the pinnacle of achievement, you know?
aye.
So,
That was my early days. It was one of the things my sponsor would quite often say to me, we didn't get a good scrape at your face. Just his way of saying just getting some self-care together, so a bit of that and a bit of energy kind of management, just making sure I don't put too much into a day.
yeah. Yeah, if you figure out how to do that, let me know. I started this morning doing a live interview with somebody at 8 from America, which, we've put it on, it'll be on this channel, and we've also shared it on our Facebook and Twitter. And then another interview at 11, which was a bit bonkers actually, because it kept cutting out. So we went between a Facebook Live and then back to here. So here I am in typical alcoholic addict form, doing 3 live interviews in one day.
Jeez, aye.
So I'm actually knackered. I'm shattered, but I'm in good form. It's always good to talk to another person in recovery, and maybe if you want to tell us a wee bit about how you got into recovery and just start us off that way.
Um, well, a long journey. Um, I started. I sort of realised that my drinking was um for the wrong reasons, getting out of hand. More about self-medication. Shortly after a breakdown, 93. I was 26 at the time, 6 months married, and um, probably getting into that year, I sort of realised this is no right. It had been off work for a couple of months, and I just no, I didn't like it, and I'd been going to sort of outpatient psychiatric services and things, and I said I actually think I'm kicking the arse out it when I have a drink, and I don't know why, and so it was that an exercise in how to lie. They give you a diary, how much you're drinking in a day. So I became kind of quite well versed at delusion, and you know, and I would forget quite a few drinks that I'd put in, but it was still over the. I think in those days it was it 21 units or something for men, and I was still well over that,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah, you said there about the delusion, just like lying to yourself, you know,
uh,
as if that was somehow going to, filling in the diary, they maybe missed a few, it was somehow going to be helpful to you or whoever it was that was going to be looking at the diary, do you know what I mean?
aye, and then a couple of years later, late to the party, I discovered cannabis, and at the beginning, my drinking dropped off quite precipitously at the beginning, and then of course the two of them just catch up, and it's just so that went on for 20 years, and going in and out of counselling, alcohol counselling services. Meanwhile, my mental health's going to aye, pardon the pun. Um, it's got out of hand. Um, I'm in quite a reasonably good job. Um, 2 kids, and then I get to 32 or something, and um, the department, I'm working in local government and civil engineering technician with the water department, and we get quangled out of this Scottish Water thing, and their employment practices are a wee bit, and they wouldn't meet the criteria now, the 2010 Discrimination Act. So absences with mental health, I get that was me out. Um, I've not held down a regular job since. Um, Further psychiatric things in weird and wonderful ways to try and either control or stop drinking. Uh, from like addiction services put me on Campral, a Camprosit, I think it was. That would have been 99. Um, aye, and I didn't do anything at all. Just made a mess of the toilet. That was about it.
Yeah,
Because it didn't, certainly didn't cut down my alcohol consumption. Then a sort of period of anti-abuse for about 18 months. And all that done was that I redressed that by upping the cannabis intake. Um, and then at some point I bumped into, there was guys in my street in the 90s now, round probably a couple of years after I had knew I had a problem myself. Um, Pals, guys I'd gone to school with and things, that when they left school had gone straight down to the woods with the monk juice, and they'd gone to AA, and for some reason I thought, nah, I can't be an alcoholic. I'd asked myself that question at one point when I was about 19, and I got rid of that thought as quickly as it came into my head. Um, but there was one guy I kept bumping into him. All these kind of coincidences, um, synchronicities, whatever you want to call it. Which uh, aye, a hand of God somewhere.
Mhm.
Kept bumping into this pal of mine at really kind of weird moments, and then at one point I met him. That part of my during the anti-abuse period, and he said he was in a group in Glasgow. Was living out Cumbernauld at the time, where I'd done most of my growing up, and he had said, "Do you want to come along to the meeting?" And I went that night, and I thought, oh, well, I've got 18 months under my belt. Um, Not really 18 months under my belt. What it was just the fear of absolute God in me that taking this abuse, because I did try drinking it on it once, and I kind of blue lights through Monklands.
The hospital.
Aye, aye, and I thought I don't know, I don't. And they're talking about 12-step programs, they're talking about God, and I'm getting through this return to religion thing myself, and apart from emptying Waterstones or self-help books and going in weird and wonderful courses and things to try and do something about my drinking, because I think I'm weak. What I need's more willpower, more um, a wee bit more hair in my chest, and face this. And on top of that, I'm emptying St Paul's bookshop in Glasgow as well, theological books. I'm an armchair theologian as well as a sort of this self-help stuff coming in. So I sort of looked at a 12-step program, and I went, no, I've got Francis of Assisi here. I've got Saint Augustine and things to stick my head into. Teilhard de Chardin and think that no, it's not my thing. And probably shortly after that, I came off the interviews. Um, uh, a few months, in the back, that twisted bit in the back of my head had kind of worked out. My wife and I were going a short break in December to Rome, and I really didn't fancy being teetotal at it. It was. Uh, So that was me, just back on the merry-go-round again. And then at some point I've picked up an article somewhere, and it's talking about a certain Beatle and talking about his sobriety, and he's talking about transcendental meditation. And I thought, give that a go. So I went, signed up, I went transcendental meditation course. And I've tried, as I say, I've tried all these weird and wonderful things. Fire walking. I thought, get down to London and go on a fire walking course, because if I can do that, then I've got the willpower to, be able to knock this in the head. And this is sort of 2010. And I've again, the TM course, the initial thing, and I've come out of that, and I'm getting the bus home, and I'm getting the bus home rather than taking the car through because after everything, I go for a pint.
Mhm.
I'm sitting in the bus, and this pal gets on the bus, who's now at that point, what, 15, 20 years sober. And he said, I'm interested in that TM stuff. And he says, we do it as our 11th step. And I'm like, oh, I know. I've remember you took me a meeting. I've looked at your steps. And he says, what about meeting me for a coffee and tell me about it? So, um, I know, mustn't rush these things in case you're putting yourself into doing something that will do you no end of good. I put him off for a couple of months and then I go to see him and he says, so how are you getting on with this team? Oh, it's brilliant, it's great. And we're sitting, um, what's the name of the place? Corner of Byers Road and Hydra Road.
Tinderbox.
Tinderbox, sitting outside there having a coffee. And oh, just bit in the back of my head going, pub across the road. There's, because at that point, I know that my drink's kind of harmful anyway. Um, I've at one point went to renovate my house with and family have moved into my brother's flat. I've said it's going to take 6 months to do this, and well, it took 5 years before the family moved back into the house again, and I lived in this building site with no hot water and things for 5 years. So it's not exactly great quality of life. And the only place I'm now going, the only place I can trust myself is wee pub down in the corner that's like two old men and a dog. And so my mate asked me, so how's the tea? And go, oh, it's great. And um, what, what you do it for? I says, well, but the drinking. They went, right. And I said, what? And I went, what for a fortnight? And he just shook his head and he went, look, how about we just come into a meeting? And he was in a group just up the road, Friday night, 10:30 to midnight. I thought that's perfectly, because Friday night was always divine right night um, for going out. And all right, okay. He says, we come to the meeting and maybe just try the thing. No, a couple of years before, actually, a couple of years before, I'd been to another couple of AA meetings. That was one of those divine interventions from my wife. She turned up at the pub one night with this pal's number and a roll of bin bags and said, "The choice is yours." And I went to a couple of meetings with him. So I kind of I knew enough about it to know that it would probably do me good. And I went, joined the group. He says, get yourself a sponsor at early doors, get yourself. And I get myself a sponsor, joined the group, they say, get myself a sponsor within a couple of weeks. And I'd love to say that that was it, but it wasn't, because I would go, and I wasn't giving up this cannabis maintenance program, and there was no one going to know about it either. And I would get
Keeping secrets.
it would take 4 months, and then I'd be back out again, and then I'd get another couple of months, and I'd be back, and those spaces just got between, they weren't even relapses, the it's just that kind of normality. So I took 2 years of that. and I'd gone, I'd gone on holiday with my wife and my two kids. The worst holiday ever, according to them, I think, because I was absolutely stark raving off the drink and off the cannabis for that fortnight. So I was absolutely hell to live with. I was going to meetings, Spain, and I was going to meetings, English speaking meetings there every day as well. And I'm, kind of earnestly trying this, but I'm living in this building site and they're a couple of miles down the road in this flat, and I just the manageability of life's zero. Um, and we were sitting watching it was a documentary. It was a Russell Brand documentary on addiction,
Hmm.
and he's talking about some people need to go into treatment centres and things. My wife's she's recently changed job at that point as well. And because when I lost my job as well, her career kind of took off. So to make things even worse, I'm drinking alcoholically, puffing cannabis addictively, and I'm the main carer for my two kids. So sitting watching this document, and he mentioned something about treatment centres. You know that way you're looking at something and you know someone's staring at you.
Hmm.
And there's this pair of eyes boring into the side of my head. And I look round and I'm, what? That kind of. And she says, I've got health insurance for this job. And I was like, right. And she says, and it allows you to go into a treatment centre once.
Hmm.
And I went, right. And let me think about it. Um, and I pondered for about 5 minutes and went, I need to. Uh, And then we got home and I put it off.
Backtracked furiously.
But aye. So we were on holiday in August. I don't go into the treatment centre till the November. Uh, and I think that's kind of where the miracle happened. Um,
So you had, was it a four
just
stay? Was it a 8 week stay? 4 weeks?
4 weeks stay, 4 weeks stay, big house in the south side of Glasgow.
So was
Um,
it run by other addicts and alkies?
the addiction program, yes. Uh-huh. Psychiatric hospital.
Yeah,
And the addiction program is people, some of them have even met at meetings.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, and it was that kind of, there's also a defiant thing about me, which I connect because I found out a year ago I have autism. So that and a brain injury. I got a brain injury when I was 17. So I've had these other aspects of things to deal with.
Yeah.
Hence, probably the recurrent mental health problems over the years. But I've also that kind of, I suppose, maybe I'm now understanding as a way of just coping with not having the manual for life.
Mhm.
Uh, and my mother would say things to me like, do you know if it was National Red Shoes Day tomorrow, you would go into school with green ones? And that kind of
Well, they would call it,
defiant thing.
they would call it oppositional defiant disorder now.
Aye. But it was even the same with youth cultures and things. the guys at school were getting into heavy metal. I went for like Bob Dylan or something, and then they were going into. Do you know the way these kind of tastes and things change as you get through each year? And I would always go and do something different. You know, it came out with punks. I get into 50s rock and roll. It was that kind of thing. Music's been a massive part of my life, all my life. And when I went in, there was a lot of people on my stay, my litter mates while I was in were all quite cynical and kind of defiant. Now I'm thinking we can't afford this out of our own pockets. This is an insurance company that's paying this. I'm getting this one chance. Um, I wouldn't say I grew up in poverty, relative scarcity, let's say. The son of a postman and eldest of seven kids, so 90s in a three-bedroom council house. So not, you know, um, but I'm looking and going, this isn't going to happen again. So I need to give it my all. And there was this say kind of cynicism and a doubt, this, not. I thought, right, bugger this. I'm actually doing the opposite of them. I'm going to give this everything I've got, you know, and um, my belligerence, I think, kind of saved me.
Yeah.
While I was in, we done first three steps, and it was quite close to where my sponsor lived, so he would come down and visit quite a lot. And then it was actually while I was in there, about a fortnight, there was a guy. Oh, that 2 years where I was in AA, also joined two groups. Um, I joined the late one in the West End on a Friday night in Glasgow, and I joined one in Stirling on a Sunday evening. And
Aye. And had it not occurred to you when you were going to meetings to do the steps?
well, we couldn't keep me sober for long enough when we really. So it
Right.
was, well, I call it a three-step waltz. One, two, three, and back out again. One, two, three, back out. You know, so it was that. Never getting to step four.
Okay. Right.
And God, my step four, I had 70 people in my resentment list. And more than one resentment against each person. It was like my sponsor was a writer, and I came in with this list like that. He took it off me, went come back in a couple of days' time. But back to, so there was a guy, kind of old timer from my group still, and came to see me one night, and I thought, well, I'm going to get a row. I've been caught. Um, they knew, you know, as I now know, when you go in when someone's been back out, bits of me dropping off everywhere. And I, it, he just sat in my room that night, and he told me his story. Uh, and about 3 hours later, he left. And I just sat and I listened to him tell me his story. I went to bed that night, and whatever happened when I woke up the next morning, there was just something felt different. There was a I've not had that feeling that as I say, I'm of a nervous disposition. I'm also a bit of a catastrophizing disposition as well. But one of those rare, overwhelming feelings that everything's going to be okay.
Hmm.
And finished my time at this treatment centre, moved back, went home. And my wife and kids have moved back home after a 5 year absence. And I would love to say it was me that finished the house, but no, while I was in the treatment centre, she got billed in to finish it. Um, and that sort of resumption of family life began again, or probably for the first time,
Mhm.
because I had been drinking alcoholically and drugging addictively since my kids were born. And prior to that, I mean, I look back at my I was kind of late to the party with the drinking as well because I was quite well behaved. Uh,
Mhm.
I didn't grow up in an alcoholic environment at home.
Mhm.
My mother's side's absolutely full of it. She's never touched alcohol because she thinks she's got that thing that they've got. My dad I would say, is a sort of would be a kind of 1970s, 80s working class drinker, which is these days a health hazard, but at that time, kind of normality. In fact, causes more havoc if he said one too few rather than one too many.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I was in when I was growing up. I lived a very structured life and quite say devout religious life actually at home. Altar boy playing the guitar in the music group in the chapel, those kind of things. And but I'd say the first time I had a drink it was altar wine. It was an altar boy. I was about 9, and I get into that thing that um when they were clearing up at the end, I would take a spank of this bottle, and I felt a peace. It's all kind of decongestant, but it wasn't just my chest, it was like my brain.
Mhm.
And then, of course, as soon as I get into the house, I'm not having this on my breath. So it's straight grab an orange, you know, it killed the smell. And looking back at that, it wasn't it was a couple of years in recovery that I started to look at these patterns that even when growing up. So there was at times because I was in this accident, this brain injury when I was 17, my last weeks of school, and got packed off to university 6 months later. That I thought that those things might have played a part, but no, it's always been there. It's always been that. Whether it's genetic predisposition or whether it's just other or a combination, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Um, it's the bottom line is that I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, and I always will be.
Yeah.
And
You've resigned from the debating society.
oh, definitely, definitely. And I would say, I mean, every time I lifted a drink when I was young, it was maybe, and a lot of it wasn't the kind of later years in school and stuff. We'd maybe get into Glasgow to see a band or something. And I was the one that puked up in the bus home. There was always those kind of, but, and I used it to cope when I was a student. I ended up dropping out my third year. Um, Brain injury stuff, with fatigue, not being able to take in information, and those kind of things. I was using alcohol to cope then, and I look back, and I'd like to say that when I held up my hands and admitted that I had a problem with it, was the first time I had a problem with it. I've always had that problem with it.
Yeah.
It's never been it's never been a functional thing. And
Mhm.
it's never really been an enjoyable thing either. It's always been a decongestant for the brain, as I like to call it now. It's always been a self-medicating against something.
You got that instant relief,
Yes.
that
Uh-huh.
sense of ease and comfort.
Uh-huh. I even get that sense of ease and comfort sometimes on the way to go and get it.
Oh God, yeah, like drunken anticipation.
Anticipation, just that way you know that
Yeah,
there'd be sometimes it'd be like, my mother-in-law's watching the wains, my wife's working late, get 4 or 5, and she worked abroad sometimes as well, so, and my
yeah,
mother-in-law's got the kids in an overnight,
yeah,
and it would be, right, I've got nothing, no one to answer to, nothing to,
yeah,
and I was drunk on the anticipation of that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I would often get that sense of relief and comfort knowing that it was coming.
Aye.
Yeah, yeah.
So, aye, 20, my last drink, of which I kicked the arse out it before I went into the treatment centre. Um,
Last chance saloon.
because I last chance saloon, and I went down to the local, all the ne'er do wells, all the in among the fabricators and fantasists that that my company had sort of descended into, drink me. I think I've drank about 50 guys who swung through the windows of the British Embassy and things like that, but at the Battle of Agincourt and things, these, and I could create as big fantasies as they did, Um,
Oh, it's every one of them.
oh, aye. And um, And there was something kind of holding me back because I quite enjoyed that. Well, I thought I enjoyed that company at the time.
Yeah.
I only ever saw, after I came out of the treatment centre, I only ever saw one of those good friends again. And that was a plumber that I owed 30 quid. And he came out of my house about 3 months after I'd come out of the rehab.
Mhm. Of course.
And
Yeah, these were fair weather friends, drinking friends.
aye, aye, aye. And now and again, I moved away from uh, eventually from where I was growing up, or where I had my young family in Cumbernauld. I moved to the middle of nowhere about 6 years ago. I'm up in the Trossachs now, and it's kind of coincided with uh, a major phase of chronic fatigue. So I've been bedbound on and off for about 75 to 90% the last 4 years.
We were talking yesterday and remind me, because I know that you've got quite a bit of abstinent time. Is that right? You've got about 10 or 11 years?
I'll be, God willing, I'll be 12 on the 12th of November this year.
Oh, brilliant. That's the day after my belly button birthday. I'm 11/11. Isn't
Right.
that great? We get two birthdays.
Aye, aye.
But
And
the reason why I'm sort of referring to that is because I was thinking about, the Vassar Bandercock stuff, the body keeps
aha,
score. So, there's nothing to say like when we get into recovery and when we stop using that our journeys are linear. Like there's often peaks and troughs along the way. I've had
yeah.
many myself. But do you reckon like the chronic fatigue is like something to do with processing your trauma and healing? Is there something?
No, it's
Oh,
directly related to the brain injury I had.
right, right, right.
The only, I mean, the mental health journey I've had on top of this has been weird. Just. because at the time when I had my first breakdown in '93, and I had said, "Does this get anything to do with my accident?" But oh no, that was a long time ago, 9 years after. Um, but I defy anyone to think that you wouldn't have problems of that kind of thing when you've had your head shaved, your skull opened, you've lain in a hospital with a slow bleed in the brain for 2 days, and you've had bits of your skull removed and reattached and things. It was quite a major. Um,
You
but
know, you're,
being fit and healthy and 17 years old, as soon as my hair grew back in, I was all better.
yeah,
Although it didn't. Everything in life felt different after that.
yeah. Well, you know
Um,
your body better than any doctor, right?
aye, but the fatigue, you can't say, "Oh, I've got fatigue." Um, Especially when I said I didn't feel right after the brain injury, and my parents took me to see my GP, and he just said, "But there's always been a want with that boy. He just needs a good kick up the backside." So I got a kick up the backside.
Trauma informed.
Aye, aye, and it, the fatigue's been a thing that where I've basically had to lie, cheat, and steal to get a sleep or a rest and things. And I've had weird and wonderful ways of being able to deal with it. Because, as I say, when you say you've got um, you're tired and you're fatigued when you're 17, 18, 19, whatever, it's at your age. You're just told you're burning the candle at both ends of the thing. 90% of people I've met in the brain injury community since all talk about fatigue, and that being the biggest long lasting thing afterwards. Um, I got a medical recognition of it about 3 years ago. So it took kind of that long. And then, as I say, all sorts of kind of mental health misdiagnoses.
So what was the
And
difference when you came in and you started working through the steps? What do you think it was that made the difference to you staying sober despite all the other like problems on top, the mental health stuff, the physical stuff? What do you attribute to staying sober this length of time?
um, and I've had 5 stays in a psychiatric hospital since I got sober. Kind of 1 month stays. Do you know, every morning I wake up and I say out loud, no matter what happens today, I will not drink or drug. And every night before when I'm rolling over to go to sleep, I say out loud, another sober day. I'm scared not to do it anymore. And it's just that kind of, um, there's been, because I mean, I've had massive suicidal ideations and things like that going on as well in my recovery. Um, But I do remember at one point someone um, going back out and taking their life, and it was in that sort of first year we'd go back to the rehab one day a week and one afternoon a week, talk about a week for that first year, and someone in that thing had said, relapsed and killed himself. First of many, I suppose, that that I've came across. But it's funny because the therapist said, well, he'd been drinking, he didn't know what he was doing. Now, I've had a few um, attempts on my life. When I just throughout the years, and one of the things was um, even when my mental health got its worst, was that it feels as bad that, that I'm now having to go back into hospital. Yes. Do I feel like killing myself? Yes. Do I feel like a drink? No. Um, it might help in the short term, but in a kind of perverse way, there was that thought that well, if I take my own life, I want people to know that I knew exactly what I was doing.
Mhm.
So there's that kind of twist to things as well. It's not all good, it's not that I've there's quite a few things as well. I kind of maintain that addiction part was something that I handed over to a higher power, and it's not mine to take back either. Um, and it's possibly I haven't ever entertained the thought for long enough without getting myself into some kind of recovery situation. These days, more it'd be going on to a Zoom meeting or something. Um,
Yeah.
and
It
even
talks, it does talk about us being prone to misery and depression, doesn't it, in the literature?
the bedevilments, aye, aye, I'm bedeviled probably extensively. Um, but again, some of that has been, let's just say, I had an entire review 18 months ago. I think there's only about a dozen people in the UK go to this place, have their entire psychiatric history pondered over for days and days, and found a lot of misdiagnoses of things and
Yeah.
misdiagnoses, and
Yeah.
then it culminating in a year ago me getting an autism diagnosis, which now makes complete and utter sense to me. And my brothers and sisters, my wife told them was, Christ, that makes sense.
Yeah. What were some of those diagnoses or misdiagnoses, Michael?
Oh, I've had psychosis, OCD. OCD was the big one. Um, it was the one that, I went through, and I went through several years of recovery, and went into psychiatric hospitals to get exposure and response therapy and things for OCD that I didn't have. Um, I as I say, growing up in a large family in a small house, um, and as now, sort of realizing it with the autism, I lived a very, very kind of structured life.
Yeah.
And my mother was very structured as well.
She would have to
She,
be. She would
she'd
have.
have to be.
Yeah.
Aye, because there's like 17 years between the oldest and the youngest, so it's
All the Wayne's in that confined space. You're right. She'd be
aye.
regimented.
And I've always been I've found comfort in that kind of regimented
Yeah.
thing, and then you become an adult and you've got to regiment it for yourself. It begins to kind
Yeah.
of unravel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, especially if you don't have that self-care and that self-discipline.
uh, uh, and then so it's a bit of that, and
So getting the autism diagnosis has been revelatory for you and your family.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, we all kind of knew for quite a while there. It was just, you know, getting that official stamp,
Yeah.
um, certified,
Yeah.
almost was like there's a validation in that.
Yeah, of course. I was talking to somebody this morning, interviewing somebody about it this morning, and we were just contemplating the whole, ADHD, autism spectrum, sort of the danger for people in recovery of assuming another or a different label other than the label of person in recovery, and how that can, at times, if not careful, could be sought out in a drug seeking terms, especially around the ADHD medication stuff. Um,
Ah,
or there could be a risk, there is definitely a risk of people seeking out a diagnosis of some other kind if in order to avoid the work of recovery or even admitting, that there's a problem, with addiction. So we were just talking about like how it's quite tricky to navigate that territory with people because you can be
ah,
accused of being anti-medication or closed-minded or it's just like, but there's a whole spectrum of different people here with different attitudes and different motivations and different diagnoses, so as people in recovery, we're trying to negotiate that with each other all the time.
aye. I can see the, and when I just got my diagnosis at first, I kind of, um, I spent last winter really no leaving this room.
Yeah.
Um, sitting up, I've sat and played the guitar for 3 hours a day since I was 9. And just doing things like that and trying to just review my life uh, and while there's that sort of trauma attached to um growing up in the 70s and 80s where um certainly my flavour of autism, especially when I'm academically clever,
Yeah.
um but just an awful strange way. I liked encyclopedias. I liked the library. I could, and to this day, I can no just rhyme off school registers of every class it was ever, and I could do it with my wee sister's class as well. It's those
Yeah.
things, and I have an autobiographic memory like an elephant,
Yeah. Yeah.
which means that resentments and things like that really kind of hang about, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Gosh.
whereas, I can call my wife the worst things in the world, and 10 minutes later she's forgot. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
it just that kind of thrown a.
I
It's
can
not
imagine.
even that I remember. I remember the shape of their mouth when they said it, or whatever. It's that. Um,
Yes.
so I've had to look over it all, and I think some of that might be, a lot of that is behind the self-medicating thing. I
Yeah.
still think that um, my predisposition to addiction was hardwired as well.
Yeah. Me too.
I've got my dad's chin and my mom's nose. You can have different things. It's
Yeah.
and if anything now, after sort of navel gazing for maybe the past 12 months, um, I've sort of decided I really need to go back to the start with my recovery again
Oh, excellent.
and go through the 12 steps again with what I know about myself.
Aye. Well,
You know,
again, that self-knowledge can be helpful. It can be useful, but ultimately it's the real beauty is in passing it on, isn't it?
uh-huh,
And showing other people how to recover. And if we don't do that aspect of it, we just navel gaze. We just, we just become
yeah.
full of self-knowledge.
aye,
I've no use to knowing.
I, true. And again, kind of looking back as well, when I've been in the psychiatric hospital, it was the same places I got sober over the years.
Mhm.
And you share the ward with the people on the addiction program. I've derived a lot of well-being when I've been, my mental health's been low enough to hospitalise me, of there being people just in
Mhm.
addiction. It's even things like asking them, where do you come from? All right, do you know there's a good meeting and such, and because I do. It's been one of my um,
Do you think that's related to getting it yourself?
I think so. I think just sometimes even saying to that, that um, obviously the shit has hit my fan because I'm in here in the psychiatric ward, but it doesn't mean to say that I need to lift a drink. And just sometimes it's that, or even I was getting permission to take some of them to meetings that I knew of over on the south side,
Mhm.
and it just, I before I was never accused of usefulness or anything like that before I got sober. I get clean and sober. Uh, it's quite a good accusation sometimes to have leveled at you is things like usefulness, helpful. Um,
Yeah.
it,
Do you think you're in a position to be accused of that today?
sometimes, sometimes on a good day, and it's. I mean, there's been lots of kind of real kind of blessings have came my way as well in recovery. It's not been it's not been a miserable journey in any shape or form. And sometimes out of the most catastrophic situations I've found as well as where the biggest blessings lie.
Oh God, yeah.
Because when I was
Horrible spiritual paradoxes.
it is, and I was less than a year sober, and my 19-year-old daughter told me she was pregnant, and um, she's now told me that another three times. And but gone through quite an abusive relationship as well that she's now, so she's on her own with four kids, um, 10, 8, 10, 8, 6 and 4, kind of evenly spread. Um, and all those grandkids, my son and I are the kind of significant male figures for them now in their lives, and none of them have ever seen me,
Drunk.
drunk. And there's that thing because what I put my kids through,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um,
And I suppose your recovery then will be having a ripple effect on your children and your grandchildren.
I
And
would,
and even if it wasn't, you're no adding to the chaos, right?
right, aye,
At the very
um,
least. At the very least.
aye. The other thing, it's just, and it's not just me either. A couple of years ago, my original sponsor died last year, kind of suddenly, but the summer before that, me and my wife had taken four grandkids on holiday, and he came and stayed with us for a couple of days, and it was just that kind of, um, aye, I've realised that greatest noise in the world is Wayne's laughing, and
Yeah.
somewhere in there, I've got a responsibility to help that noise get made.
Oh God,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's those, I'm there's been events, there's been adversities, there's been trauma and things, and I've gone to a few seminars of people like Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk and things, and looked deep into, you know, um,
Yeah,
God, this is a blessed life, this sobriety game.
yeah,
You
it really
know,
is.
it really, really is.
Yeah,
Um,
I often think, I pinch myself sometimes because, I got clean and sober so young. And I just think, like, the Amazing Grace, the hymn.
aye,
I remember belting that out in the shower when I was maybe, I don't know, a few days, maybe 10 days clean. And I was in the shower, right? Because I wasn't clean. I'd wash my face, but that was it. I'd do the basics. But I was in the shower and I was belting out this hymn, and I had never in my whole life sang in the shower. Like never.
aye,
Like I can't sing for toffee, but I love to sing. Um, and here I caught myself in the shower singing this "A Wretch Like Me," and even tonight I thought it. I wrote something for the Justice and Peace, uh, as the kind of political wing of the Catholic Church, and I wrote
aye,
I wrote something for them, and they published it, and I read it back, and I just thought, a wretch like me. Do you know what I mean? Like there is that whole. I'll show you this. This is my fridge, right? I don't know. Can you see it? I don't want to show you this week. Can you
oh,
see
put my
that whole?
specs on.
Right, there's a wee picture there, me making my Holy Communion.
Aye,
Right. Now, that Wayne was 7 years old, and she was thinking, God, I'm not good enough for this. Like, they've put this white dress on me. Look at me. I'm terrible. I'm rubbish. Why? God knows that I'm rubbish. Like, I'm not fit to marry Jesus, like this wee. And I remember the photograph getting taken and thinking, I hope they can't see how rubbish I am.
aye,
That
aye,
was, and that's the Waynes that you're talking about making laugh. Do you know what I mean? That was who, at my core, that's who that lassie was. And in the 50, almost 3-year-old woman they knew that I still feel like that. Do you know what I mean? I still feel like unworthy. Um,
oh,
and this time it's not, I look back at that child and I think, God, you were so worthy, and I
aye,
feel so sad. And that's the reason why she's on my fridge, because it's to remind me that she was beautiful, she was worthy. And now there's a like again the spiritual paradox. I think there's an element that I'm not worthy to have received, that gift of sobriety and to have maintained it for so long. I am truly blessed, in a way that's really hard to describe, but I still feel unworthy, but it's a different kind of unworthy. Yeah.
aye.
Mm.
I, I've I've no idea why. Uh, because there are. I mean, I've revisited some of my old haunts to a certain extent over the years. One of the things I got back um, was playing music again, and a few years ago was back out, and I was playing in pubs that I used to drink in,
Yeah.
and seeing people several years older and several years drunker and things, and going, well, if I'd continued, in fact, when COVID came along, um, I was I was talking to, in fact, I think kind of double holstered me. It was me and three other guys that I know from the rooms. Had gone up to Pluscarden Abbey for a couple of days retreat,
Mm.
really well timed. So we going up with. Um, spent, so it's a 5 hour drive up, so there's all that. And then the time there, and we nipped out to some meetings in Annemarie first, and then the journey home, and it was great. And then COVID came along and it threw everything into kind of disarray. And I thought I would never have survived that had I still been drinking.
Oh God, no. I wouldn't, there's no way I'd be alive. I wouldn't even have made
I,
it to my 20s, my 27th, 28th birthday. No chance. You know?
I, I would have caught a very, very virulent strain of it, probably by going somewhere in places I shouldn't be, looking for drink or drugs.
Yeah.
When there was those kind of restrictions, I would have. I, I doubt I would have saw the other end of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing that we're here to tell the tale, isn't it?
Aye, aye, it's a and aye, it's been a bit poignant. I've been thinking of this the last couple of days. Was I done the kind of funny looking back on that. It was my 7 grandson's 90s indie guitar music daft. So I was trying to get my Oasis tickets and at the weekend. And I was playing in bands and things at that time as well. And I'd done that whole self-destructive thing and found out on Friday that one of the guys that I used to play with died on Friday. Lung cancer at 51. Uh, the
Yeah,
it's not always a direct thing, but
yeah,
the 15 joints of council dope a day will take its toll somewhere down the,
yeah, absolutely.
you know,
I think that's the great thing about recovery. I was told to deal with my addictions in the order they were killing me in, and so obviously drugs were first and foremost. But nicotine addiction was much harder, to put down. And I did eventually put it down. I relapsed. It's the only one I've relapsed with, but I did relapse at a period in my life where I was very, very frightened. Um,
aye,
I was all throughout my pregnancy with CJ, my son. I craved cigarettes, but I think one of the big things that helped me stop smoking was my sponsor and other people said to me, it's a deliberate act of self-harm. Once you become conscious of it, you realize that you're harming yourself with each drag. And I was like, oh yeah, that really fucked up my thinking. Do you know what I mean? And it was like put it right in front of me. I couldn't deny the self-harm. And
aye,
I think like when we do, so many of our friends and family die young, from that sort of whatever the self-destructive behavior is, whether it,
ah,
it's just it's like we're that kind of self-hatred, that self-harm is pummeled into us from somewhere. Like and it's so strange because I look at my son and he's the opposite, like the the chain is well and truly broken because he's like all about fitness and health and
aye,
like he's so like the opposite. Like, no, mum, good nutrition,
aye.
telling
I
me,
must, my son's the same down the stairs and now doing his personal trainer courses, powerlifting and all that, 28, and
yeah,
it's,
brilliant.
it kind of just, I think he took one look at me and decided that he was going to go in the opposite direction.
Brilliant.
But even then as well, a bit of the I I think I might even have a wee bit of the survivor guilt thing that what I put myself through to still be here. So I have a kind of a duty to be grateful and to make the most of this. My
Yeah,
closest friend never saw 50 and he never smoked. was never an alcoholic, anything like that. In fact, my two closest pals that I grew up with,
Yeah.
one was 42 and one was 49. Um, bowel cancer, two very fit and healthy guys.
Yeah.
In fact, the one I was really kind of close to moved over to Canada, and reports had gone in his direction. Um, I got to spend some time with him a few months before he died. He was back over here, and we were sitting out my garden, and he was telling me at the time where he'd heard the reports that I had gone into rehab, and Nick's an alcoholic, and he's going to rehab, and he went. No one knew me better than this guy. Um, that's what it is. And I says to him, so what do you mean that's what it is? What would you know about alcoholism? And he says, I've been going to the adult children of alcoholics over in
Oh,
Canada for the past 10 years. And I went,
brilliant.
fuck. So it was that kind of, but I,
Did you attend or do you attend any other fellowships other than A?
I've dipped in and out. I've dipped in and out. My wife's been an Al-Anon goer. Um, Not so much these days because she's kind of busy helping my daughter and having a job that's can be 60, 70 hours a week sometimes. Um, so I'm going to, I went through a period there where I really needed to go to CODA meetings to actually realise that no matter how unreasonable other people were being round about me, it was actually, I had a to actually the disquiet that caused was my responsibility.
Yeah.
Um,
You had to
and
attach with love.
yes, I and it's funny. I was down went down to London for it in 2017. It was the Bessel van der Kolk workshop and things, and I decided I like going with I call them sober safaris. Open the Where to Find book and look and go, I've never been to a meeting in Fort William, and get in the car and decide. My favourites, funny that I avoided driving like the plague when I was drinking. Now my favourite seat's the one behind the wheel, and put an audio book on or some
Oh,
music and a big long drive
bliss.
and finish it with a meeting and then treat myself to a fish supper. So that's
Right.
what meetings in the coast are great. You get a right good fish supper after it. But the when I was down in London, I went to Coda meetings just about every night, and and then came up here. There's not so many up here. The other thing that I discovered when it was lockdown, and everything was on Zoom. And I went online and my own group at the time, which is my home group prior to COVID, was the calendar group in Stirlingshire. It closed down, never reopened. Um, but we were up and running a few weeks before the lockdown happened. Uh, and I had got right into the Zoom thing. And sometimes I suffer a wee bit from um, insomnia. And one of the blessings in that adversity was that at 3 o'clock in the morning you can't go to sleep. There's a meeting in California or somewhere.
I know it's brilliant,
And
isn't
it
it?
was it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
it's suddenly as if in that situation that the world kind of got bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I found myself also I found out about a fellowship called Arts Anonymous. Um, and see the kind of creative side of things for me's always been really important. And there's been a lot of times where I've deliberately self-sabotaged with that.
Yeah.
And um, I do it for no other reason now, any of that kind of creative stuff than it's just a gift I was given that needs expressed. Uh, and I did kind of learn a wee bit about um, that area in my life that where I had been also doing the people pleasing that side of things. So um, when I've gone to Al-Anon meetings as well, um, I think
All been helpful.
aye, because although no one will actually admit to it, that there were other alcoholics in the family. It was kind of pretty obvious, you
Yeah.
know. I only wish somebody'd take my granny's dog to Al-Anon. It was just a poor thing was a bag of nerves.
Well, that would explain why, the whole family was nervous, the whole walking on eggshells thing,
Aye.
the Coda explores and adult children of alcoholics explore, like these unwritten rules and boundaries that people don't have, the enmeshment of the family. There's so much
Um,
to learn, isn't there, once you come into recovery and unpick it and heal from it all.
ah,
Listen, we're coming up to an hour and a half, so I was just thinking maybe you want to give us a wee tune on the guitar or a wee song or finish
oh,
finish us off with a wee rendition of something. I don't know.
all right.
Would that be
Hold
a
on,
wee?
they plug in, so I'll need to get something to plug them in.
Oh,
Hold on, I've never done that before. Hold on. Um,
your debut. Your your YouTube debut.
eh,
Song of your choice, of course.
let's see. Eh,
Take your time, there's no rush.
oh, I'll this wee thing up.
Well, I think that's just a lovely way to end.
Right. Now all I need to do is eh, I'll give us a wee tuning.
Aye, take your time. There's no rush.
My specs on so that I can see. Eh, right. these two are up here to get um get repaired or tinkered with.
It's always
The other ones are down the stairs. Right. I will need to take it off these in ear things.
you're fine.
Let's see. And right, can you hear me?
I can hear you absolutely fine, yep.
God, my fingers on the button. There's a moon over Bourbon Street at night. See faces as they pass beneath the pale lamp light. I've no choice but to follow that cow. Bright lights, the people, and the morning all. I pray every day to be strong, for I know what I do must be wrong. No, you've never seen my shades, nor hear the sound of my feet while there's a moon over Bourbon Street. Years ago, I became what I am, wrapped in this life, an innocent lamb. I can never show my face. I know only see me walking by the light of the moon, the brim of my hat lights the eyes of a beast in the face of a sinner at the hands of a priest. No, you never see my shades. Now hear the sound of my feet.
Oh, that was lovely. Thank you so much. Do you know, it reminded me of a kind of, I don't know, not that I know anything about music, but a kind of blues number from a speakeasy. I could imagine being in a speakeasy in the 1920s.
Aye, aye. It's an old Sting song from about 1985, 86, round about then. His first solo album. But I'm a fan of kind of old things,
Aye, aye, aye.
old music.
Me too. I'm a bit old-fashioned. Listen, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to convey to anybody that might be watching now or in 100 years from now?
Um, Stick with the winners. it's, it's, it's really the kind of, aye, um, I honestly I can't sort of think. I can't, um, it's great waking up every day and, knowing that your best days are still to come,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, good. It's a lovely way to end. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for stepping up and sharing so much of, your journey. Really,
It's been a pleasure. It's been cathartic as well. It's probably done me no end of good.
but don't watch it back because then you'll be like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that.
Aye, aye.
That'll just do your head in. But no, it's the therapeutic value, isn't it, of one addict helping
I
another.
think- Aye, aye. That's how it started, and it's a formula that should never be footered with.
I think so. I think so. And I think there's a lot of footering goes on with it.
Aye.
If you stick to what's there and what's in the book, you'll not go wrong. And I think more importantly, if you pass it on to somebody else.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Aye. And it's that there's a couple of just that wee bit, that kind of thing in the doctor's opinion that my sponsor used to always point me to. And it's where it mentions you can recreate your life. I don't know any other thing that has that on offer.
Yeah. We really are very, very blessed.
Aye,
No everybody gets access to it. And no everybody, I love the Tolkien, no everybody that wanders is lost, or no everybody that is lost wander or whatever it is, I can't remember, but no everybody that comes to gets what's on offer, no everybody sees it.
aye,
And
aye,
I don't know why that is. Because I knew that I grabbed it like a dying man to a life raft. Um,
aye. I think the biggest grace for me was in that period where it was on offer and I wasn't taking it fully.
aye, it's funny, isn't it? Like we resist that. You spoke about it a few times. We resist that anything that's good for us stuff.
Aye,
It's like an inbuilt self-hatred, self-loathing. Yeah.
it's the apple or a chocolate biscuit. It's just that.
Yeah. For anybody, I was thinking when you said, the boys can do in the park with the monk juice, for anybody that's interested in what the monk juice is, you're talking about buckfast wine.
Yes, yes. Wreck the Hoose Juice Trumpet. Trumpet was a local name for it, an account of how they held the the bottle. Aye, aye.
Yeah,
Um, the monk juice. So which was the first thing I ever had at a party. When I was 14.
yeah, Merrydown, gold label Merrydown for me when I was 11.
I'd gone to a party. I was 14, and I was staying at a pal, so I didn't need to worry about coming home smelling a drink.
Yeah. And crucially, what it did for me was you couldn't see how shit I was. That wee lassie in the picture, she was protected. I thought I had a veil.
Aye, I was a sort of late developer, so I was at that point. I was really.
small, 6 foot now, but I was 5 foot nothing, and covered in acne and not being able to say boot you a goose or talk to a girl or anything like that. He'd always done like that. And it turned me into a few mouthfuls. I was kind of Connery's version of Bond, only a wee bit cooler.
Are you sure?
Oh, shit.
Like, are you sure
And,
about
and two, and like, and about two mouthfuls of this, and I had suddenly, I
that?
was, I,
The exiliar of life. I've arrived. So
I,
many
I
drugs.
was,
So many
I,
drugs. I've arrived.
I'd gone for 5 foot, 6 foot 5, my stocking soles, and just the,
Yeah.
the smoothest guy on the planet, and about an hour later they were pulling me out a rose bush.
Yeah. Throwing up everywhere.
Aye. And then the next day I didn't think, oh, that was an awful experience.
No,
I wouldn't do that again. It
can't
was,
wait. How am I going to get money to do that again?
am I going to get that chance again? Aye.
I know, God love us.
Aye.
Really did. Well, thank you so much. I'll just stop the recording. So thank you so much, Michael. God bless you.